Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Mike. Yeah, that's me.
Hi, Mike.
I'm in the back. Mike Mills, I'm security architect for Farm Credit Mid-America. I have been in IT for just shy of 30 years. You could believe that, but who's counting? And as you can tell in the picture, I'm a compulsive hobby collector. And so that's me in the background with my youngest daughter being very surprised and somewhat scared of the sparks that I'm throwing at the moment. Today, we are going to talk about the CISA eviction strategy tool. Actually, we're not. We're going to talk about threat intelligence. Actually, we're not. We're really going to be talking about cyber resilience. So cyber resilience in the context of what we're talking about today is really in the specific context of threats, controls, and incident response, and how these things contribute into a cyber resilience posture. And so just to level set, this is going to be a conversation where we are talking about process over product. This is not a high-tech conversation, although technology is going to be involved. We are going to be talking more about the idea of how our people and how our process is going to be driving things, and then we're going to use that technology as a component. Now, one more thing. The title was gigantic, and it talked about the art of the possible. Now, the art of the possible is actually defined as the attainable, the art of the next best. And it was coined by this dude who said it over 150 years ago. It sounds poetic and it's wonderful, but we have modern day philosophers. So let's see what the modern day philosophers say about the art of the possible. Our good old friend, Reddit. And so the art of the possible, according to Reddit, is let's create a utopian fantasy. You get your clients into their mental gears so they can get their purse strings loosened. Okay, this is a little bit of what we're going to be talking about today. This is about setting a vision statement that you can bring to your leadership, that you can bring to your organization. That doesn't mean that it's going to work perfectly, but you can sell the concepts. If you get 10%, if you get 20% of some of the concepts, you bettered your organization. And so, full disclaimer, this is not a replacement for incident response retainer. This is not going to be a conversation about baseline controls. There's an expectation we're going to have all of those things. It's not going to be a replacement for cyber hygiene or CTEM or any of the other things that we need to do as a regular care and feeding process. So we're going to break this down a little bit. Let's start with some problem statements. Linking a control to a risk is hard. It is very easy academically to say, this is the risk, control. It's a very different conversation when you're talking to a leader. And that conversation is, well, what's the real world implication of this? Because I know the negative implications of this. It's going to cost me an extra 30 seconds every time my team member logs in for multi-factor authentication. Multiply that by 2,000, that's a lot of minutes that's wasted over the course of a year. What's the odds that we're really going to be doing this? Building a pragmatic incident response playbook is hard. You go right back to this. You can build a hypothetical situation in an incident response playbook. But linking that playbook to the actual things that are really happening in this world, and how do you respond? How do you defend ahead of time? How do you build in predefined decisions in the moment of the event? Not always easy. Linking a risk to process improvement is super hard. It is easy to click a checkbox and to change a technology. It is very difficult in an organization to fundamentally develop or change an existing process. And to do that with a security context can be much harder. There's only so much room we can use with the boogeyman. Fear, uncertainty, and doubt doesn't work in most organizations. And so linking real world risk to real world improvement is a hard thing to do. And so let's show up some diagrams. This is a very common resilience Venn diagram. Many of us have threat intelligence in some way, shape, or form. Many of us have incident response in some way, shape, or form. And many of us have preventative controls in some way, shape, or form. And they are very happy in their little silos. And they just live in their bubbles and they do whatever they need to do. Well, we really want to be here. We want to be in that sweet spot, that classic Venn diagram. We want our threat intelligence, our incident response runbooks and playbooks and plan. We want our preventative controls to be linked to the real world threats. And we want that to feed back into the prep section of our incident response. we're going to go back to the history again. We talked about Otto von Bismarck for a moment. Now we're going to talk about John Boyd. John Boyd, Korean War veteran, Air Force pilot. He flew the F-86 Sabre. And this is what he loved to do. He loved being an Air Force pilot. The problem was he was in the Korean War, and he had a nasty habit of these guys wanting to shoot him out of the sky. And so in the era, the MiG-15 and the F-86 were very similarly matched to each other from a technical capabilities perspective. And John saw that. And as a guy who didn't get shot out of the sky, he did what every red-blooded American and fighter pilot would do. He designed an awesome process. I know, right? John Boyd actually is the inventor of what he coined as the OODA loop. And so this is where you observe, you orient, you decide, and you act. And so in the context of air superiority and fighter pilots in that era, his philosophy was, you're observing, you're taking a lot of different inputs in the middle of a very dynamic, complex environment. And you're orienting yourself to all of those observations. And some of this is cultural implications, and some of this is various other previous experiences. And some you're analyzing in the moment. Then you make a decision. And either your decision is going to work or it's not going to work. And you need to test that decision and then decide whether or not you're going to have a feedback loop. And what's neat about this is that all of these feedback loops come back, and you're actually doing this subliminally many times a second in high stress situations. And often you're doing this even without thinking about it. He just happened to put this into a process and started to get people to talk about common themes and common factors. Interestingly enough, John retired as an Air Force pilot, became a strategist for the Air Force, and the United States used this for about 50 years in their doctrine for how to adapt and to use the OODA loop in combat situations. And so he had a couple of goals. We're going to get to a point. He wanted this to be rapid and timely. And he wanted this to be effective. He wanted to disrupt the attacker's progress. In this instance, the MiG-15s. We'll get to where this is important to us in a moment. More importantly, he wanted this to be disruptive because he knew while he wrote down his OODA loop, those other fighter pilots had their own OODA loop at the same time. And so the goal here is to get ahead of them, to inject yourself into their loop, disrupt their loop so that you can have the upper hand. Now, that's neat. Okay, you're done with the history lessons for the moment. What if we were to take this and adapt it into the cyberspace? A cyber OODA loop in the resilience form could take observation as threat intelligence, TTPs, what your SOC is telling you, what your logs are telling you. It can orient. And so your technology stack matters and your business constraints matter. You don't want to shut down a mission critical system if your role is retail and it's Black Friday. Maybe you do. Your company culture matters. How horizontal is your communications within your organization? And then your decisions. Your decisions can be runbooks or pre-decided authorizations, meaning that we're not going to make this decision right now because we are in a peacetime environment. But if we have a confirmed incident, leadership has already approved that we will take action X or action Y. And then we're going to act. In this instance, acting could be tabletop exercises. It could be preventative mitigations. Again, we're testing these things and then we're feeding them back into that OODA loop. And of course, if I remember to click. So let's talk about some tools at our disposal. So this graph is a graph that's available online. This is talking about how to map your blue team to the MITRE attack framework. And the concept here is that you have a threat actor and they've been identified by your intelligence team. And that is going to help you with TTPs. And at some point, your blue team is going to be able to react. Now, those are some very interesting tools, and this actually pretty loosely maps into that OODA, the cyber OODA loop that we were talking about. In this particular instance, they use the term blue team. In my connotation, I'm going to actually expand this. My blue team is my security team, my IT operations team, and my leadership team, because they have to exist in an ecosystem to be effective and actually be efficient. So we'll dig in. Threat actors and cyber resilience. You've probably seen graphs like this before. Some of them are prettier than others. I happen to choose one that I thought was more graphically pleasing. We have threat actors that are showing in the last 3 months, and this is from a time period earlier this year, of who is likely to be attacking us. So from credit's perspective, the Akira ransomware group is very likely to be interested in us because their targets are finance and ag. Okay, that's a red flag. And then we have another one below from a different organization, and we're talking about the most recent St. Paul cyber attack that resulted in quite a lot of disruption for the city of St. Paul. And they were targeted by the Interlock ransomware, and they are purely opportunistic. The thing with opportunistic actors is this is likely to be attacked by them as your neighbor. We also, when we go back to that graph, we talk about TTPs. So here's another tool that we have at our disposal. Now, many of you know this and have seen this. This is the pyramid of pain. And the pyramid of pain talks about how much difficulty the attacker has in changing some of the more trivial things, hashes and IP addresses. And it talks about the more difficult things, to the point where your TTPs are the lifeblood of your threat actor group. And burning TTPs could result in the demise of that threat actor group. There have been instances over the past couple of years where they have internal fighting and somebody decides just to burn all of that organization's TTPs and they dissolve. And then they create another funky name threat group and off we go. The cycle begins. So all of that ties into the CISA evictions strategy tool. So CISA, while they're under a bit of a struggle right now with the federal government shutdown, actually has recently released this tool. This is a tool that I think has been under-advertised in the security industry. It came out, they made an announcement. It really didn't get a lot of media attention. And so it is designed as a mechanism to evict an attacker once they are in your organization. Now, that's interesting to me, but we're going to get into where this could be even more interesting. From a technical perspective, it's really two different pieces. It's Playbook NG, and so this is a web interface. It is stateless, and so you can use it and it will forget everything about you. And then it uses a database that they coined Counter. And Counter is over 200 counter action methods, mitigating controls and countermeasures for adversary TTPs. Now, we take this, combine it with that threat intelligence. Now we have an interesting tool. Now we have something that could be very useful. And so from CISA's perspective, they really see this as the black line. They see this as containment and eviction. So this is the NIST diagram for a modern incident response playbook. And CISA is a hyper-focused component of respond and recover. I would posit that it has a more compelling secondary use under the control improvement process. We'll get into some examples and we'll talk about those things. So we're going to go back to that St. Paul opportunistic ransomware actor. So this is the Interlock gang. And we happen to see it in our ISAC. That's interesting. Leaders are getting upset and a little concerned about things. How well are we protected? And so CISA, again, happens to do a very good job using the stop ransomware hashtag of identifying and advertising TTPs. And so whenever a new ransomware group comes out, MITRE, CISA, and several other organizations are doing a very good job of providing TTPs on what those threat actors are known to. In this particular instance, we could download it in JSON, PDF, or XML. And so we grab that, and then we jump into the CISA eviction strategies tool. They happen to have a tech ID extractor, which I think is actually the secret sauce that turns this from a nice academic exercise into an actual useful web interface. Federally funded, free, stateless, no login required. You dump all of your TTPs into it, and it actually starts to produce on the right-hand side all of the known eviction techniques. Then we could dump it out into JSON, Excel, or Word. So in Excel, we're actually going to get a high-level summary. These are the types of conversations you can start having with your technical leaders, your security leaders, at an extremely high level. If you want more detail, dumping it out into Word and Markdown will actually give you the intended outcome, an introduction of overview of how the mitigation is going to help. Preparation, things you need to do before you turn on the mitigation, the risks, the guidance, and the references. And then what is also interesting to me is the fact that you can dump it into JSON, and this allows you to keep your working run books local to you, and you just re-import them and iterate them as you need them. So that's how that product works. Let's talk about a few input use cases. So we get into specific threat actors with documented TTPs. That's great. They also provide just generalized attacks. And so the example on the left-hand side is just Active Directory has been compromised in some way, shape, or form. We don't know the threat actor. We don't know what's going on. But they do actually provide a small library and growing library of just general approaches. Or we can start talking about hybrid approaches. And so what if we were to take our local ISSA and we took the last quarter's known reported TTPs and produced a heat map? Now we can start talking to leadership about the idea of this technique, and specifically these three sub-techniques are the most reported events that are happening in our business vertical today. We should probably be well prepared, either in preventative controls or reactive controls, if this were to happen to us. So, use cases. Realistic tabletop exercises. Imagine a world where you get to play war games, but you actually know what's going on behind the scenes. The dungeon master of your own TTP in a scenario that is hyper-realistic and hyper-contextualized. If we go back to Akira, I can now walk up to one of my business teams and say, your online banking application has been successfully exploited by the Akira ransomware group. What do you do? And while they are working through this, I have an eviction strategies tool in the background. I understand Akira's TTPs, and I understand the tools that are identified, well-known, that would kick them out. We can start exercising those things. This spawns conversations that are well beyond the idea of evicting a bad actor. This is a conversation of reset all of your service accounts. Now, if you see a look of shock and horror, this is a great conversation to be having with those teams. If they can knock that out, if they can automate that, that's a very different conversation. This allows you to start working around it within real world risk, to start being more preventative, more preparatory. Use case number 2. Let's do some threat risk control linkage. And so again, the heat map conversation. What if we were to take heat maps for things that are well known? Insider threat. CISA, for instance, worked with MITRE, and MITRE has a insider threat working group, and they list all the TTPs that are known for insider threats. And now we can actually start talking to leadership on the idea of, if we're concerned about insider threat, here are the common mechanisms that we can use. Here are the controls that are proven to be most likely to mitigate insider threat or an attacker or any other number of real world risks in our environment. When you come to a leader and the conversation is, I need to spend $200,000 and it's going to cost us this 6 months worth of time for this team. That conversation can be very different if you can show 3 examples of real world risk cases that are linked to real world mitigations. Use case 3, we get into the memes, a little punchy. Real world event preparation. So again, leader alignment, muscle memory process training. By actually using real attackers, you can start building processes and testing our processes to build that muscle memory. How about automation prioritization? If you have 3,000 things in your environment you want to automate, but 5 of those things are most likely to stop an attack in their tracks. How would you prioritize that? Here's some of the links. And so I think this will actually be shared out for everybody, but if you all want to grab a picture, I'll be happy to leave it. Of all of these links, the one that I would encourage the most is the threat sources, the MITRE ATT&CK threat sources is great, but also the information sharing and analysis centers. If you are not a member of an ISSA, go for your ISSA. Some of the information that they're providing is just the Lord's work. It's just really, really good stuff. We have a few moments. I can show a present demonstration of how easy this looks, or if we have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them. I'm going to go ahead and join into the demonstration real quick. I will have to share my different screen. Here's your new playbooks and your CISA eviction strategy. Start. While that's loading, I'll go ahead and find my TTPs. So, the Stop Ransomware group, the lovely webpage. We'll search for Akira and see if they come up with something. Very slow. Near the bottom of the Akira, pull that JSON file. Grab it. Now we're going to go back to that attack techniques. Use the tech ID extractor, dump it, and it instantly adds all of these techniques that it pulled, parsed out of that JSON file. This has been exceedingly good at parsing information without any extra massaging. I initially started this by writing some PowerShell and Python and stuff like that, and found it was worthless. You just didn't need it. It just worked well enough to go ahead and just let them do their thing. Selected. What it has done now is actually identified all of the techniques. Jump to the countermeasures. And you can tweak your countermeasures if you want. This is actually open source on GitHub. And so you can even edit your countermeasures if you want to create a totally custom event. It's all containerized. And so you can house your own internal version. And then you review. And once you're ready to review, here are all of your countermeasures that you've identified. And it's easy enough to then export to JSON, Word, or any other version that you want to do. I didn't invent any of this stuff. I'm just shamelessly using the products that are available for free for us. But yeah, if you all have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Is the JSON format, is it formatted with any specific like system to upload it into? Is it formatted for something that you're supposed to upload that into?
The output of the CISA eviction strategies tool?
Right. You said it could be outputted in JSON if you wanted to. Is that in a format that's meant to be consumed by something else?
It's in a sticks format.
Sticks format. Okay. So it's compatible with any of the like federally tools.
It's supposed to be. I don't have access to a lot of those other federally tools. But
Yeah. Well, sometimes those make their way into the commercial space too, because they're selling it to both markets.
Mike, what would you say to somebody who's like, oh, we've got teams of people who do that. I don't need to be focused on that. What would you say the applicability of this is for just anybody in cybersecurity?
So I would say show this to your teams, because there is an opportunity here to reduce the amount of effort to generate some of these mitigating controls. Perhaps you're a large enough organization where you have your own team. We're a great organization. We're not large enough to have our own dedicated teams for this. So for organizations that are in the middle tier or even the lower tier, this is extremely valuable stuff. But I would anticipate that even for larger tiers, those teams might see this as a reduction to the amount of effort that they're getting to produce that artifact.
Yeah, and the reason I ask that is because for me, anybody can get value out of this, right? Like, if you start researching, like, what are real life attacks and that's what you should be studying up on. That's what you should be learning how to do. And if it references, Active Directory, whatever technology, like, I find this applicable for anybody at any point of their cybersecurity career.
So, Mike, how aged is the information?
So at the moment, it's about 2 months out of date because it coincides with the federal shutdown. Up until the moment of the federal shutdown, they were actively updating it. There is actually a warning banner on the top of the CISA page that they are no longer updating that website until after they get their money.
So when I use the word aged, how old was the techniques that they were posting, when they're posting regularly?
They appear to be pretty up to date.
Yeah.
But I don't have any direct information on how current the techniques are from a quantifiable perspective.
That, the reason I ask is years ago, we tried to use some. And we would find it was like stuff we knew 3-4 months ago.
Right.
Or even older. So my question is, you know, is it out of date when you pull it in? If you're saying it's up to date, that's cool. I mean, that would be awesome if it's there.
In the few analysis that I've done, it looks like it's very current and rather thoughtful, and especially in smaller mid-sized organizations. The idea of even the more basic controls being fully deployed, there's probably gaps. And so there's opportunities here, even if they are some 3 months old or something along those lines. But I don't really have a lot of good quantifiable.
DLP lights are what actually gives it justice. Yeah. A good Google search will generate the same level.
Did you say there was a way to look at what the most common things are, or you know, where would you start if you just?
So we happen to be a member of an ISAC. And so one of the things that we take advantage of is or have the opportunity to take advantage of is to look at self-reported. And those in our ISAC are mapped through TTPs. And so that's the reference that I'm using. Most ISACs should have something very similar to that. Maybe you could put. Thank you for your time.